So I had somebody message me on my light strip tutorial that I did asking how they could implement a keyboard with their project. So you'd hit a key and be able to switch between your colors or patterns or whatnot. And I talked to them about a 4x4 keypad like one of these that I use in an old project. Here's that old project. This is not the rock I've been hiding under lately. This is the rock I was hiding under last year during the coronavirus pandemic. My company shut down for like 5 weeks, so this is kind of what I threw myself into, and it doesn't look like much here, but it's a big project. But enough about that. We'll take a little bit of a look with that later when I talk about the keypad implementation, but I figure we'll start simple, and we'll just hook up a simple keypad with our lights over here. I've already got it done. I'll show you how to implement this little keypad with your lights, so you can just hit a button and change your lights or patterns. And these are super easy to set up, guys. They should be super quick and easy. I'll talk a little bit about how to actually use a keyboard too. I'm not going to go too far into that in this video. This is mainly just to set up one of these. There's a little bit more to it if you want to use an actual keyboard, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's go over here and see what I got going on quick. So you probably recognize this old setup here. It's the same exact setup I had going on in that fast LED tutorial and the longer tutorial I did. All I got added to that original project is this keypad, basically. And these things are just super easy to implement. As you can tell, all I did is added in some of these Dupont wires, I think you call these, Dupont wires. Plug them into your rows and columns here, and then plug them right into your breadboards. Couldn't be easier than that. So these keypads are essentially like push buttons. Like each of these is its own push button, and it uses a matrix basically. So there's like two layers of metal in here. You got your rows and then your columns that are crossed over each other. So when you push one of the buttons, it makes contacts between the top and bottom layers of your keypad here. And then you got your wires from each of those layers coming out of here, and I think the first 4 are your rows and the last 4 are your columns. So your rows go row 1, 2, 3, 4, and then column 1, 2, 3, 4 coming out of here. And that's important to remember when we get into the code. I'll show you, we'll look at the code in a second here, but yeah, it couldn't be easier than that. I just plugged in wires to that, and let's see, I got my rows are going from right to left, starting at pin number 3, I think. Hopefully you can see that. Yeah, my row 1 starting on 3, and it just follows over row 1, 2, 3, 4, and then column 1, 2, 3, 4 on pins 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 down there. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the hardware. It's pretty simple, and you can see you got, I only have 3 lights set up, but 1, 2, 3, and 4 just switches between my colors back there. But yeah, super easy. We'll take a look at the code quick and go from there. Alright, so let's take a look at the code really quick. So you recognize most of this pretty much if you watch either my long fast LED tutorial or my quick tutorial. Basically just have our fast LED library, all the stuff that we set up during that tutorial, you know. But we need to add in our keypad. So first things first, let's go to our manage libraries thing and find our keypad library. I already have it installed, but just for you guys, let's go find our keypad library. They have I2C keypad. They got a lot of different types of keypads, but this is a basic one I'm using. Is just a basic keypad library by Mark Stanley. Go ahead and install that if you haven't already. Once that's installed, then we can start implementing our library, and I'll show you how we add that to our basic code. And right now, all I have right now set up in the actual loop program is just it's setting it to purple, basically. And if you watch my other tutorials, you know all about how to do this already. So we're just gonna add in our keypad. Let's go ahead and do that quick. So I got the keypad set up already on my other screen. I'll just kind of walk through the stuff that we have to add in here as I copy and paste it. Make it hopefully quick and easy. But we need to include our keypad header file. That'll include our keypad library, makes everything easy, makes life nice. Alright, what's next? So we need to add some constants of data type byte. A byte holds 8 bits, and we're calling this one rows. And remember, we have 4 wires on our rows and 4 wires on our columns. That's basically what this is. We're just saying that's a constant and it's never going to change in our program. So after that, we need to add in our character array. What the heck is this nonsense? Alright, so char, that's our character. It's just telling what data type we're storing in here. All of these are being stored as characters, not numbers, basically. But it's a dual array, so it's a if you remember, an array is like a container. It holds a lot of different things. So our first array, rows, is basically like this section here. It holds 4 different pieces of data in that array. But then our columns are the up and down, basically. So if we're picking location row 0 in column 0, then that would be this one, and so on and so forth. Or row 1 column 1 would be 5, and so on and so forth. Hopefully that's good enough. I'm trying to make this a super quick and easy to implement video, guys. But alright, what do we got next? We need to implement our some other bytes for where we actually have those pins plugged in on our board over there. So these are actual variables that will change in the program. But yeah, they're arrays that they're basically assigning the pins. Remember I said my rows started at pin 3. So pin 3, 4, 5, and 6 are my rows off of the keypad, and pin 7, 8, 9, and 10 are my columns on the keypad. So that's basically making an array, assigning in the keypad LED library, telling it what pins the keypad are actually plugged into. And that's, you'll have to change that for your own program depending on where you decide to plug them in on your board. These just happen to be the pins that I'm using right now on mine, so keep that in mind. You might have to change these if you're setting it up differently than I've got. Alright, what's next? We need to declare an instance of our keypad class. Alright, so declaring an instance of our class, like up here, declaring our row pins, and we're saying what data type is being stored in the row pins. Well, we're kind of doing that here. That's kind of how classes work. We're declaring a keypad class, and this indicates what kind of data we're storing in what we're calling keypad here. So keypad, we're setting equal to keypad, make key map keys is yeah, that's just kind of the magic that happens under the shell of our keypad library. We're not gonna go too much into that. I'm trying to make it super quick and easy to get this up and going, guys. Maybe we'll dive more in depth into this later. But yeah, just declaring our rows, pins. These two are just saying what pins we're plugged into, and these are what characters we're storing in each of those locations. And it'll probably make more sense here how that's being implemented in a minute. But alright, next we need to declare a character and call it key. So this is just a variable that we're going to store a character in, and we'll use that in our code in a minute. Alright, I think that's it for our setup, or before our setup. That's it for our declarations, I guess. Let's go ahead and get into our loop. So basically, when we want to push, what we want to happen is we want to push a button and be able to switch to a color based on what button we're pressed. So there's two things we need to do really. We need to implement an if statement and add a few more of these pieces of color code. But first thing we need to do is actually get a keypad press. And this is where we use that key character that I declared earlier. We'll stick that in there. So we're using that char that we selected up here. We called it key, we didn't assign it to anything yet, but that's what we're doing here in our loop. So every time we go through our loop, we're going to call this keypad.getKey, which basically just pulls the keypad, sees if anything's pressed on the keypad, and if something's pressed, it's going to store it in this variable. So yeah, that's pretty much it for grabbing a button press from our keypad. Super easy. But now we need to add some if statements around our code so that when we press a button, or we only want it to run our code when it sees a button's pressed. Close that off with another bracket. So now with what we have set up here, every time through the loop it's going to scan the keypad, see if anything's pressed, and if that variable happens to be equal to this 1, then it's going to turn our lights purple. And if we want to add more, we just simply copy and paste that a few more times. How easy is this? And we'll just change our colors. Say we want it to be green and something crazy like, I don't know, red. Yeah, that's it, guys. Couldn't get much easier than that. Just doing a few things to set up our keypad, and now we can flick through our colors. And you can just as easily, if you looked at some of the patterns that I had in the other tutorial videos, you could just as easily do a pattern instead of a color. Bloop. Purple, this one should be red. Or green, maybe. Sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. This one's red, I think. Yeah, alright. It works. Sweet. So in my locker project, it's a little different, a little more unique from what I had set up originally. It's a little more complicated, but I said I'd show you guys anyway. So in this locker project, I need to enter 2 digits to select a locker, basically. And the way I had this set up here on the light strip, you just hit 1 digit and it changes it based on, it's basically acting like push buttons. Well, in the locker project, I want it to act more like a keypad where I can enter multiple characters. So I have 2 digits for each locker that I need to enter. So it needs to gather that information that I'm entering on the keypad. And once I'm done entering the whole code or whatever, it does the next part of the program or whatever I want to do. In this case, unlock a certain locker. So let's take a look at that real quick. So this is my granted function. Basically, once you scan your RFID badge, you'll go into this function here, go through all this nonsense. There's a lot of nonsense going on here, but we don't need to worry about all that. Find my keypad. Should recognize this. We used this in our LED array earlier. Yeah, so we're in a do while loop here. It ends right here. So this whole piece of code here is a do while loop. If you're not familiar with that, basically all of this code we're gonna do repeatedly over and over again until this is no longer true. Or how do I implement that? So while this is true, we're gonna do this loop. And I'm using a positions not equal to 2. And that'll make more sense in a second. But let's go ahead and look through what I got going on here. So we're going to get our keypad get key. We're going to store it in a key variable. In my locker project, I want digits entered. At least when you're checking out a locker, trying to open a locker. So I got this if statement set up so that if you didn't press a number, a numeric key, it'll give you an error, basically say, hey, stupid, push the right number. Anyway, this is where we're actually gathering our number. So if key is an actual numeric character, these are OR statements. So if key is equal to 0 or equal to 1 or equal to 2 or equal to 3 or equal to 4, if any of those are pushed, we're going to go, and I've got this entered key array. That's a character array, basically. And I think I have position set up to, do I have that up here? Yeah, position equals 0. I'm declaring a byte called position and setting equal to 0 up here. But so yeah, this is a character array starting at position 0. So if key, say I want to enter 0, 1, that's the locker I want to enter. So I'll get the key stored in my variable called key, and first part here will store it in position 0. So that 0 that we entered is going to be stored in our entered key array. So if position is equal to 0, which it is, we're just going to clear what's on the display. This is not very important, but this is all for the display. It clears the display so that we can write new stuff out. But the important part is once we say we press 0, we stored it in the key variable. Now we're going to store that 0 in our array. So position 0 of our array is now holding 0. And we do all this display stuff, and then we're going to increment our position here. So once we get through our do while loop and we go back and start the whole do while loop over again, our position is going to be 1 now. So it'll sit there through our do while loop and just keep getting the key. The next one we want to enter is 1. So we'll hit 1 on our keypad for our next position. So remember, we're in position 1 now. So we have position 0 equals 0, and position 1, we entered 1 on our keypad, so that's going to store it in position 1. And so now we have 0, 1 stored in this entered key array, basically. And again, we're going to increment our position, so we'll be on position 2 now. Well, we'll go through this and get to our while. Well, position, this is no longer true. So position is not equal, so our position is equal to 2 now. So this was, the do while loop was looking for a condition where we're not equal to 2. So that was true before, but now it's no longer true because our position is equal to 2. So we're going to jump out of this loop and continue with the rest of our program. And yeah, basically, I don't know if it's really important to talk about how I implemented that, but the important thing is I stored 2 digits in a entered key array, and I'm evaluating the first digit here. If entered key position 0 is equal to 0, then we're using a switch case statement. So if it's position 0, we'll go and we'll evaluate the next position, and if it's position 1, we'll go into our case statement. If what's stored in position 1 is the character 1, we'll do this. Run this part of the program, which basically runs, if I remember right, it unlocks the locker, goes for a delay, and then relocks it. But yeah, that's basically how I'm using 2 digits in my with a switch case statement. You know, someday I might actually go through this locker project. I've been doing this YouTube stuff long enough to know that projects don't do very well. The best way for me to make videos about this project would be say, hey, I've got this project, but then break it down into individual components. Say how to use my RTC clock to keep track of time, and how to use my I2C LCD display. You know, do videos on each individual component so that you can build your own whatever you want to build, you know. The reason projects don't do well is because most people don't wake up and say, hey, I want to do this project. Most people want to say, hey, I've got this project in mind, and they want to know how to implement this piece of that project in their project, which is kind of why I wanted to do this for this, how to run your LCD light strip with a keypad, basically. But man, I've been ranting a long time, guys. This is going to take a long time to edit. I better wrap up the video. This is Life Me Lightning, bringing a little lightning into your life. Turns out Who's out there? Huh? Who's that? Oh.